We're very, very focused on taking a fiscally responsible approach. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world economy.
This is Canada, the second largest country in the world, located on the North American continent right above the United States. What is more fascinating about Canada's geography is that 80% of the entire Canadian population lives within just 100 miles of the United States border. And in fact, 50% of all Canadians live just south of this line. Every year, Canada allows about 300,000 immigrants legally enter the country, amounting nearly 2% of total population. However, some policymakers believe that Canada should increase the threshold of immigrants' acceptance to ramp up the country as on global scale and aim to increase population to 100 million spread the Canada by 2040. The whole plan is based on conventional wisdom that the people work on the constant level of productivity which brings higher GDP output. The province of Canada, Ontario, accounts for 38% of the Canadian GDP. Most people tend to live in areas where economic activities are available. That is why the largest industries in Canada, real estate, mining, and manufacturing, are mostly located in these provinces. As mentioned at the beginning of the video, thousands of immigrants willing to come to Canada to have a better future for their family. But what is going on with Canada's economy? Is Canada not the right place to migrate? In this video I will explain the reasons, but before that, please subscribe the video if you have not yet, and kindly press like button. First, let's dive in on the major factors that affect Canada's economy. Housing problem.
Canadians are living on the most borrowed money than people in all other G7 nations, mostly because of our big mortgages.
Canadians are living on the most borrowed money than people in all other G7 nations, mostly because of Canadians' big mortgages, which has a major portion of their expenses. Since the financial crisis, house prices in Canada have doubled. This housing boom is spurred by consumer spending. In 2009, the government's stimulus program to prop up the economy and the central bank's interest rate near 1% encouraged Canadians to pile up debt to buy homes. People are buying because they hope or fear that prices will keep rising. In the past year, rising interest rates have softened housing prices for now, but most renters in Canada still feel that the dream of homeownership may be unattainable. According to the results of an Ipsos, 63% of Canadians who don't own a home have given up on ever owning one. Immigration has been a significant driver of rental demand in recent years. Many newcomers to Canada initially rent homes rather than purchasing, which helps to sustain demand for rental units. Canada is not alone. House prices also look high relative to rents in most developed countries like the US and UK, which appear reasonably priced. What makes the Canadian housing market an outlier is its consumers, whose ability to borrow and spend may be nearing its limit. Canadians spend a bigger share of investment capital on housing than businesses. Investment issue. The 2023 report, which used OECD statistics, shows that private business investment per employment in Canada is also among the lowest in OECD countries. It's time the federal government tackle these challenges with innovative policies to stimulate private investment. Why does Canadians' pro-business investment record matter? Capital deepening improves labor productivity. The same working hours produce more output. When companies invest, they adopt the latest innovations, enabling them to reduce their production costs. Canadians' pro-investment performance is a leading cause of our per capita economic growth declining to virtually nil from 2015 to 20. Political issue. Canada has relied a lot on its natural resources to fuel growth, but look at how Argentina and South Africa, which also have an abundance of natural resources. Those two countries were the subjects of recent long reads in this newspaper and are very good examples for Canadian politicians of what not to do. Yet Canada's politicians seem to be making the same mistakes politicians in Argentina and South Africa did. They behaved as if their country's wealth was endless, and look where they are now. Here are some critical mistakes that parallel those made by the aforementioned countries. The Canadian government has made it clear that it wants corporations to become benevolent organizations that put workers before shareholders. It favors taxing corporations and the rich and adding regulatory impediments to corporate activity. It is a big supporter of income redistribution at the expense of making the pie larger for everyone by investing in the expansion of productive capacity. It wants to regulate the economy and nudge corporations to submit to its social views and economic philosophy. Its policies discourage entrepreneurship and wealth creation and replace them with handouts to every significant lobby and activist group. The government increasingly seems not to understand how people get jobs and how they get by, and how heavily favoring environmental issues stirred up by activists over economic concerns kills jobs. Productivity problem. Economic productivity is a measure of the rate at which the output of goods and services are produced per unit of input. For example, labor, capital, and raw materials. While Canada ranks among the top countries to live in, Canadians' productivity doesn't even hit the top 10 compared to other countries in the OECD. That productivity grade is a proxy for how well we compete, which is poorly where productivity is a measure of GDP per capita. Canada is currently ranked 18th. Number 1 is Ireland, which GDP per hour worked at 42.5%. Compared to the United States, Canadian productivity has diminished by 9% between 2000 and 2022, falling to roughly 72% of that of the US. The reasons for Canada's diminished productivity. While the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and labor shortages have had an impact, this issue predates the pandemic. In 2019, Canada ranked 18th as well. More relevant is the greater number of small business in Canada as a percentage of overall employment. OECD data suggests large companies invest more in productivity, improving technology and training. But even then, many of Canada's largest organizations are comfortably part of stable oligopolies, banking and telecommunications companies, for example, with less industry pressure to be more competitive. Canada's trades and apprenticeship programs, where many of the people who implement productivity-enhancing measures would come from, are also less developed, especially in comparison to European countries. In addition, Canada continues to suffer from overinvestment in another less productive sector of the economy, housing. Housing-related activity is bigger than any other sector of the economy, including manufacturing, mining, oil and gas, and so on. Economic strategies that rely on real estate for growth are misplaced and need to be reconsidered. Fundraising and investments have to be channeled to more productivity-enhancing industries, such as robotics, cybersecurity, and additive manufacturing, to name a few. And yet, looking at the government's most aggressive pro-immigration policy, one has to realize that this is not going to happen anytime soon. As a country, Canadians need strategies that promote wealth creation and economic prosperity by moving away from the public sector, resources, and real estate to other, more productivity-enhancing sectors of the economy, and aim for expanding productive capacity as opposed to playing Robin Hood. Could a government that cares more about getting reelected, follows policies driven by activists, and neglects its larger mission and mandate be up to the task? Thank you for watching today's video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating content. Stay tuned for our next exploration into the extraordinary contents